Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. So, hey guys, top 10 misconceptions about World War One. Original link to the video, top of the description. Indy Nidell is awesome. The Great War. Let's do it. Misconceptions. Let's head right into it.
There's been a lot more coverage of the Second World War than the First, as most of you are no
True.
doubt aware. And we've noticed that probably because of that lack of coverage, people have a lot of misconceptions about the First World War. How
was I not subscribed? Oh, this is on my second channel. I'm going to upload it to my first, obviously. All right.
and where coverage, people have a lot of misconceptions about the First World War, how and where it happened and who was fighting it. And we're going to try to fix that today.
To me, more and more, World War I is just so much more interesting to think about and talk about. Two big reasons. One, it's not exactly clear who the big starter of the war was, aggressor, and of the entire thing. We know it started with assassination, but World War II is, there seems to be no way that Germany could have won, so there's not much fun thinking about how they could have, you know, come out on top on the war and some military different strategy going in to get oil. And the other is it's much more clear-cut how the war was started and who started it and who was the main aggressor. And so World War I is just a much more fun topic, to me, more so now, as I'm learning more.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to a Great War special episode, the top 10 popular misconceptions about the war. Number 10, Russia was only a second-grade military power in the First World War. Not true. Russia may have left the war after the revolution, and certainly the Great Retreat and disasters like the Battle of Tannenberg don't exactly make the Russian military record shine. But
I don't know that much about Russian military World War I, but I didn't really have the perception that they were weak.
the Russian army was anything but a pushover. At this time, 100 years ago, they were just romping through eastern Anatolia, and the Brusilov offensive and the innovative tactics it used came seriously close to knocking Austria out of the war, or even collapsing the entire Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Russo-Japanese War, though, did have a big hit on their prestige, I guess.
It certainly broke the back of their army. The enormous growth and modernization of the Russian military industry by 1916 was also nothing to sneeze at. Number 9, everything has already been said.
I hate my chair. Jesus. There we go. Okay. Sorry. I need a new chair.
And modernization of the Russian military industry by 1916 was also nothing to sneeze at. Number 9, everything has already been said about the war. No, new stuff is being discovered all the time, like that Edith Cavell actually was spying for Britain, or that Falkenhayn's claim that the Battle of Verdun was to bleed France to death is quite likely an invention after the fact. Files are being declassified even now, 100 years after the war. Who knows what we're going to find out? Number 8, the Germans were the bad guys in the war. Really? Since they were the bad guys in World War II and wartime stories of the bloodthirsty Huns circulated in Allied media.
I love how he said, really?
Years after the war. Who knows what we're going to find out? Number 8, the Germans were the bad guys in the war. Really?
The way he says that is really funny.
Since they were the bad guys in World War II and wartime stories of the bloodthirsty Huns circulated in Allied media, they had to be the bad guys, right? And they got all the blame at Versailles in 1919. That has to count for something.
I think most people just... I think if you even look a little bit into World War I, you quickly figure out that World War I Germany is not World War II Germany, Nazi Germany. And I think it's the people who really don't learn anything about World War I or much about World War II either that just assume Germany, World War equals Nazi, you know?
Bad guys, right? And they got all the blame at Versailles in 1919. That has to count for something. Well, not so much. Was it Germany's fault that the whole house of cards came crashing down? That the war escalated into the horror that it did? Not so much more than anybody else in Europe.
I disagree. And please, okay? Let me know. I'm still learning. Let me know if you disagree. I know you will. Why am I even saying that? You always do. Wilhelm II. Kaiser Wilhelm II. All right? If you get, I think, out of any, so, okay. Take aside who started the war, what country, for a second. If you could, what person do you think, what historical figure of World War I, pre-World War I, do you think, and I mean like right before World War I, like who is still alive at the day, what person had the most, if you took them out, would World War I least likely still occur? I think Kaiser Wilhelm II, easily. And it just seems like if a Serbian, and say even it was a Serbian government, okay, I know it's kind of shaky if it was a random Serbian nationalist who assassinated, or if he was actually connected to the Serbian government, which would make it an act of war. And so clearly you could say Serbia and Austria were the catalyst of the war, but that doesn't mean that they started the world war. That doesn't mean that they knew that it would escalate into a world war. It could have just been a Balkan conflict, but it was the treaties and things. So right away, I cancel Serbia and Austria-Hungary out of. I can be changed. A lot of people say Austria-Hungary was a big instigator and a lot of stuff I might not be fully aware of. Fair enough. I'll change my mind when I look at that. But it seems like them having the fighting, you can't blame Austria-Hungary for wanting to declare war on Serbia, right? And so then it comes to Russia, who seemed to mobilize first, in Germany, who was just, it seems like Germany was just itching for a fight, and he was just too, Kaiser Wilhelm II was just too out there, and his mouth just saying stupid things that I think rustled the feathers of all these, made him a threat, and I think that had a big effect, him leading to the war. I didn't explain that perfectly, but I just think Wilhelm II was a big catalyst.
Who all had outdated ideas about the necessity of the war and how to pursue it. And sure, you do have episodes like the rape of Belgium, but atrocities were committed by all sides. The Armenian genocide and the massacres committed by the Russians in East Prussia in 1914 spring to mind. Just because somebody is the enemy doesn't mean that they're the bad guy. Sometimes there is no bad guy. Sometimes everyone is the bad guy. Number 7, the war in the skies was a gentleman's war. The Flying Aces, like the Red Baron and Billy Bishop, they were the rock stars of the war, gliding above the carnage and fighting man-to-man chivalrously, except, again, not so much. They were fighting with machine guns, and they were most often flying in formations by the second half of the war, when the average life expectancy of the pilots could be measured in hours. And never forget, the perfect kill happened when the enemy never saw you coming. Number 6, World War I was a European war, not a world war. Not true. It had its origins in Europe, and there was certainly a lot of the fighting done in Europe, but, you know, once the Ottoman Empire joined, you should have a clue how it would spread. Even before that, Japan fought against Germany. The United States and Brazil would eventually join the war. There were battles in the South Pacific.
It's funny. At first, I'm like, that's ridiculous. And a split second, I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, oh. But you had the stuff, the people that eventually joined, and you had stuff over in East Asia, but was that a result of the assassination in Austria-Hungary? Austro-Hungarian Empire. I do believe it. I'm not saying that I'm saying, oh, it's not a world war, but I had to think about it for a sec.
and the South Atlantic, soldiers from every continent, except Antarctica, would fight. And of course, there was fighting all over
penguins?
Africa, mainly by colonial overlords, but there were fronts in Persia, Mesopotamia, Libya, and even the borders of India. Definitely a world war here. Number 5, the war was only fought in the trenches. The trenches are the symbol of World War I, and while they appeared on pretty much every front, the vast trench networks were only really common on the Western Front. In the deserts or the huge open spaces of the Eastern Front, cavalry played a bigger role, and huge trench systems would have been most often impossible to maintain. Number 4, tactics during the war
because of the vast space
didn't change. It's easy to think that, looking at the week-by-week the war, most often impossible to maintain. Number 4, tactics during the war didn't change. It's easy to think that, looking at the week-by-week carnage, how we cover it, but if you look at tactics in 1914 and those in 1918, it would be difficult to find many real similarities. The stalemate across the various fronts pretty much forced tactical innovation. Heck, the war saw the advent of mechanized mobile warfare, and certainly the techniques Hitler's Wehrmacht used at the beginning of World War II grew directly out of those used at the end of World War I. Number 3, navies did not play a real part in World War I. Well, the biggest battle in naval history, the Battle of Jutland, happened in World War I. Britain's Atlantic blockade of Germany was a big factor in depriving Germany of supplies. There were countless naval skirmishes all over the war. Germany tried to turn the tide of war with unrestricted U-boat warfare. And if you look at the Mediterranean, the major powers there were using their navies to block each other. There were also great stories of German raiders like the Möwe or the Emden, which you should definitely check out there. Number 2, the German army wasn't defeated in World War I. Yes, they were. They endured far longer than...
I mean, I was going to say they signed a treaty, but they're saying the German army itself didn't lose.
...did in World War I. Yes, they were. They endured far longer than anyone could have imagined, and their final offensives in 1918 were real forces to be reckoned with. But the state of the army by the summer of 1918 was catastrophic in terms of supplies and morale. And the state of their allies was worse. Austria-Hungary never really recovered after 1916. The Ottoman Empire had huge problems even before the war.
Honestly, this one is a big help to me because I always wondered how they really lost in World War I, and so this fact helps me out.
Never really recovered after 1916. The Ottoman Empire had huge problems even before the war, and the Bulgarian army collapsed. And the German army did call for a ceasefire before the Allies broke through the Hindenburg Line, which they would have done. Number 1, World War I was mainly fought on the Western Front. There was the Eastern Front, the Serbian Front, the Italian Front, the Salonika Front, Gallipoli, the Persian Front, the Mesopotamian Front, the Palestine Front, the Libyan Front, the Caucasus Front, the Romanian Front.
So the fronts like Persian Front, Mesopotamian Front, Palestinian Front, Libyan Front, those are all in order to secure resource production and getting resources and the transportation of those resources to where the battle is, right? Like, are there serious battles on these fronts over land, like for the land or just for the resources is what I'm...
East Africa, Southwest Africa, Cameroon, the war at sea, the Arab Revolt. Did I miss anything? The Western Front was but a fraction, and not even a big fraction, of the total of the First World.
Sorry, I'm an idiot, because you had the Ottomans, and they bordered a lot of those areas, so never mind.
And not even a big fraction of the total of the First World War. Okay, well, that is my list for now. Now, no doubt you have many things you disagree with, or many others you'd like to add to the list. Please let us know in the comments. And for anyone new to our channel, you can find over 200 videos about World War I on our channel. But if you're a bit overwhelmed with the selection, you can check out our 101 video right here.
Don't forget to subscribe. I really need to learn more, as you can probably see my gaps in knowledge in this video about World War I, and so I want to do that. British Path, great channel.
See you next time.
Great channel. Indie. Awesome. All right, I think I'm up for more videos. Maybe one or two more. Discord. Yeah. See you guys next time.